Hi, Rachel. I am just so thrilled to be able to sit down and chat with you today. And so, Rachel, for those of you who are interested, I met Rachel through my practitioner mentorship program. And Rachel just brings such a fascinating clinician's background into, and also then obviously now with the lens of the circadian biology, the water, the mitochondria. And I'm just so excited to have a conversation with you today because not only do I think that you have such cool stuff to share, but also you just informed me that you are, like, if you want to share, you are being impacted by the wildfires in California. So if you wouldn't mind, maybe feel free to start with what resonates with you in that.
Yes, Carrie, I'm so happy to be talking to you too. You have impacted my life in such a wonderful way after, 20 years of practicing holistic medicine, like to need to find something new and then to find you, is amazing. So I'm thrilled to be here to know you. I am being impacted by the wildfires. I used to live in the Pacific Palisades and my house is completely burned down. And I really still wanted to be here today. I think, and I was just saying this in our brief little like hi chat before we started, like I think there is a clarity that comes in moments like these that I didn't want to miss. So I'm ready. Where
Well,
should we begin?
yeah, no, great. And I want to let people know, like, you are now in a temporary Airbnb situation, so your internet's not great. But I want people to listen to the words because Rachel has just in like the short, like you said, the little high conversation we had, you had so many insights, and I want to make sure that we can touch on at least several of those. So, okay. So first and foremost, I think what now you're doing, I want people to know what your background as a clinician is, because I think that will help them understand these insights that you've received in this very difficult time for people. So, when did you become a clinician, and take us through that journey that brings you to today?
I mean, that was another journey that I'm going to try to truncate into like 30 seconds or less, but I had a whole other career. Um, it was nourishing me in ways that were financial and other ways and what I thought I wanted, but it wasn't. I was very unhappy and I started getting sick. So that was like almost 20 years ago. And I had a background in meditation. So that was sort of where I first went, meditation. And then I found the Peter Levine somatic experiencing, nervous system work, and then energy medicine. My first healer was an energy medicine practitioner. And I ended up walking out of my life. Um, much like I just did right now, in a different, without a fire, but completely walking out of a life. And I stayed in the meditation, I stayed with the somatic experience, but I started learning Ayurveda, homeopathy, something called medical radiesthesia, and then cranial sacral therapy, polarity therapy, which was actually really interesting to come from a lot of the more esoteric arts and then to put your hands on a person. There's something about putting your hands on a person and feeling the resonance of that energy, and that is incomparable. I don't do it anymore. I do everything by phone, but that is still my, like, the bottom line of an energy imprint. Like when you know what other humans feel like, what that resonance is, similar to like when we talk about using the sun and the earth to ground and get our circadian rhythm, and like it doesn't have to be all the time. And you talk about this so beautifully, the way that we can adapt. We can adapt, but if you just kind of know the resonance, like, like you go out and like you see the sunrise. I'm looking out this way because this is where my window is, and this is where I go out and look at the sunrise. So it's like muscle memory. But like if we know that energy imprint, then we can start pulling that in with, even though like right now I'm sitting in front of my partner's laptop that has no, like my laptop has the red screen and the this and the, you know, this is like full fledged, whatever. And like, after this, I'm just going to go outside for a little while. I've been thinking about, before we go into anything else, I've just like been thinking about this a lot in terms of our clothes, because we have all clothes that are in our clothes. We lost all of our clothes, except for what we walked out in. And like, I brought one or two things because I thought we'll just be out overnight, you know, we get evacuated or mourned a lot. And there's like, I keep looking at my partner and I'm like, who are you? And like myself, I'm like, I don't feel, but I've noticed that if we wear like one article, this is a totally new thing. And I'm wearing all, well, no, I brought slippers. So I have my slippers. If we have one article that's like something that felt like we knew, that it like sort of it adapts, it like brings in the other articles slowly, which I've been thinking about a lot in terms of resilience and adaptation energy. Anyway, so back to like my story. So I learned all of those things. Then I started having a practice in LA. And then COVID happened and I was still having my practice on the phone. And then I became so sick I could barely get out of bed, which is like so humbling as a practitioner, especially when you're still working with clients and I have all the support, all the energy medicine, all the like homeopathy, all the nutritional supplements, any cleanse. And I did it all. And one day I got an email from you. I have no idea how I ended up on your list. And it was like something about adrenal fatigue, you know, which everyone in the holistic community knows a lot about adrenal fatigue and all the things. And I was like, well, I've treated the adrenal fatigue, you know, and wellness has become quite an interesting enterprise in the last decade too, where it is an enterprise. So it's like trying to root out the snake oil salesman, to be perfectly honest. But you said in your email, I think, that you promised me that I would feel better in 3 days if I did this class with you. And I was like, who the fuck is that? Like, what? Like 3 days, 3 days. But then I like used my intuition and I was like, I don't believe this woman that I'm going to feel better in 3 days, but like, fine, I'm going to take her class. And I took the class. And by day 3, I felt 80% human again. And you sold me nothing. There was no supplement to buy. And I'm sure like a lot of people listening to this and a lot of people that you've interviewed or whatever, it's pretty miraculous. So that's my story to getting to the circadian stuff.
Wow. That's so powerful. And I think it's a testament to so many things. Number one, a testament to you for recognizing like just when something like resonates with you, it's like you kind of trust this intuition. You have got this beautiful intuition antenna. And then to try something like with that, like, yes, it's like, okay, maybe I'm skeptical, but if it resonates and you try it, like that takes a very open-minded clinician with so many other tools in your clinician's toolbox to say, well, you know, maybe there's something else here that I've been missing, which was me too in my story. It's like I thought I had I did. We have good tools in our tool belts, right, for as clinicians, but maybe we were just missing a piece, and that was the missing piece for me too. And I'm so grateful. I don't know how you got that email or whatever. I'm so grateful you got it, you opened it, you did it. I mean, because you've blessed me in our group in terms of the mentorship and just ongoing as well because of all the gifts that you share. So like, okay. So I'm feeling a couple of different things right now. Number one, I'm feeling this energy of simplicity, if you will. Like you said, like maybe you lost a lot of, you lost everything. So it could have been red light therapy devices. It could have been these water filtration machines. It could have been a sauna. I mean, there's so many things that you likely lost during this fire. But it almost, I'm hearing this sense of like, but what if I just had my slippers and my slippers are a big enough tie to me? And and that energetic resonance, or I have the sunrise. No matter where I am on the planet and what's happened, I have the sunrise. So can you speak to this idea of like, wow, like, yes, fire is devastating, but maybe there's a way that we can help people in any form of devastation move forward with simple steps.
Yeah, I think that that is one of the brilliant tools of using the system of using the circadian biology, the grounding and the sun as a main vehicle of health, because I don't need to carry a lot of shit with me. Sorry to be cursing. I don't. Well, I want to shout out Kelly Bento for like immediately sending me a new torch, like just like out of like, and people have been so kind and so loving and so wonderful and so giving. And I think Kelly's red light products are the most amazing thing.
Agreed.
And we don't need as much stuff as we have. And you talk about that a lot with supplements, right? Like these might actually be harming you, And I think that the simplicity of we can just go out and get sunlight, even when the air's bad. I can go put my feet in the ground because the body knows how to heal. Like I don't know if you've heard this story, and I'm going to botch it up, but there's a story that Ram Dass told a lot about bringing his teacher like the equivalent of 50 hits of LSD. And his teacher being like, give it to me, like, let's go. And his teacher, then nothing happened. Nothing happened to him. And Ram Dass was like, what do you mean? And his teacher was like, if you're connected, again, I'm botching up what was said, but it's something like, if you can connect to the divine, whatever we want to know as the energy that this world, if you can get caught in that, you're not movable. Like it's not that. It's my internet connection's unstable. Is it? Can you hear me?
I can hear you. Okay.
Can you hear me? Is that
yes?
Okay. And I think about that a lot, especially right now. And I think about like all the tools I had for work and the stuff to make homeopathic remedies and the this and the that and all of that resonance is around us all the time to access. I don't want to get too woo-woo with it, but I would, if I could impart any wisdom on anybody ever, is that like a lot of the woo-woo is a lot less woo-woo than we think. I grew up in New York City. I grew up, going to New York City private school and having a very like solid material world life. I was not destined for this in any way, shape, or form. I mean, apparently I was. But I didn't come to the idea of energy and this, like, that didn't come, like, that wasn't just right there for me. But it is the most real thing that I know. And I know that we don't need an external healer. We don't need a external remedy. We don't need any of those things. We need to be able to be open to the idea that we can access ourselves. And I would love to become obsolete as a practitioner because of that. And that's what you do, Carrie. You're teaching so much so that people don't need, and it's like, I try to say to my clients, I'm like, if you would really like hunker down in one or two sessions, like you'd never have to come to me again, because I'm just going to tell you to go in the sun and do that, whatever anyway. So yeah, I think that that's my simplicity, my feeling about how simple and yet vast and expanse it all is.
That's beautiful. And I absolutely love so much of what you said there. And that's been my experience too, with it. It's just, it's this circadian stuff, the sunlight stuff, it's, if you haven't tried it, it can be so profound and powerful, and the earthing and the grounding. And it's, like you said, it's always accessible. I've even had the sickest of the sickest clients who simply, all they can do is open a window, and still that light comes in and it starts to, sync their brain and their bodies up with knowledge, information, energy and information that they can use to heal. And so it's so powerful. And yeah, you're right. Like, I really truly do hope at some point in time that this information doesn't need to be taught. It just becomes a part of the collective consciousness of all humanity, where people just naturally wake up and go right outside. Because wouldn't that be a beautiful place to get to? And I think, as you're alluding to as well, what I have found, I was raised religious, but my deeper spiritual journey actually started when I did go outside and start to develop these light practices of, if there's something so magical about like that resonance of that energy at sunrise, and going outside at UVA rise, and going on a walk and looking at the trees and listening to the birds. I mean, there's something so powerful about that it really gave me that energy of, I'm already whole. Like, right? Like, I don't necessarily need to continue to seek. It's like, wow. I mean, and that might sound woo as heck for people with this conversation, but it was so powerful. Whereas before it was like, what's the latest, my science brain, what's the latest supplement? What's the latest this? What's the latest that? And it's like, oh, but it's all here. And I can tap into it because it's all here already.
Totally. I mean, I couldn't agree with anything that you just said more. I think yeah, it just brings me into like just the thinking of what we've talked about in terms of resilience too, just how we're naturally so resilient. And that there isn't a huge fix out there. And if we can get, there might be a huge fix out there, right? But it usually happens after a person, in what I've noticed in my clinical practice and in my own life, it usually happens after we get to this point of stillness that is almost like losing, like you just let yourself lose. And then things come. And I've been thinking about that with the grief and the loss of losing all of my material possessions, all of my photographs, all of my, everything that is my history and my family's history. And I've been really intentional about going through the grief and the loss, because I know as a clinician that grief is a medicine that if you use it and you work it, it can heal anything that you have ever, it could heal almost any ailment. But if you skip over it or try to pass through it, there can be some problems. And so just really intentionally getting to this grief and loss place to allow, like a burn, everything gets burned away, and then what comes up, right? And then in so many spiritual practices, fire is a purification. And I don't mean to sugarcoat this or to like spiritually bypass it, because it is hard. Kids are not able to go to their schools. People don't have houses. Like, there is a lot that is hard that I believe as a society, as a community, it's such a great opportunity to come together and support each other. And that purification process can't be ignored. There's something, I said I started in meditation, and the first form of meditation I did was called Vedic meditation. And I started when I was really young, really by accident. was one of the greatest gifts of my life. And they talk about, my teacher talked a lot about avoiding the ever repeating known, of just your life going in a pattern that is comfortable. And that if it does, that I'm not remembering the words. I think he said the destructive forces are going to come in and clear it out. So again, I'm in no way intimating that everybody who lost their house or was devastated by these fires needed some kind of push in their life or anything like that. That is not for me to say, and I won't ever know that. But I can own up to the places in my life where that might have been true. And I can experience the grief and the loss of that place that was dear and known to me, and all of my things that made me me, and see what's going to grow. But I can't see what's going to grow. You know, the initial impulse, we have family here that we really don't want to leave. We have a 3-year-old granddaughter, my stepdaughter, you know, just have a lot, like there are roots for us to stay. But the impulse of, oh my God, we just got to get the hell out of LA. Like, where can we go? We're going to go. We're going to get out of here. And in spite of the air, and in spite of the toxicity, and in spite of like all of the LA things that are happening, again, that deep inner knowing of like, I think we need to just go through this. Like, I think we need to really go through the loss of this to see what's next.
Can you, because you do have this beautiful background with Peter Levine's work, and can you I want you to talk to people about who Peter Levine is, and also this, you're bringing up again, and I think it's very beautiful, about like feeling the grief, feeling the loss, and going through it as a means of ultimately transformation. But that might be a very foreign concept or difficult for people to wrap their brain around. Can we get a little more concrete into what that could look like as supports for people going through something like this?
That's a great question. Let's start with me describing Peter Levine, and if I forget the next part, just poke me.
Deal.
Peter Levine is a I believe he started as a psychotherapist. And he created something called somatic experiencing. The way that I was told the story of Peter starting somatic experiencing was that he was just being a regular therapist. And I think he might have been hypnotizing his patients or clients. And one patient went into hypnosis and ended up in a like state of like a lot of shaking. And I think Peter was afraid, and like any of us would be if we didn't know. And then she came out of the hypnosis. She had all these phobias before. And she came out of the hypnosis and like stopped this crazy shaking, and then like went out and like came back in the next session and was like, I don't have any more phobias. And so I think that's how Peter started to like be like, what the hell was that shaking? And like, what's going on here? And so he started studying animals in the wild. Animals in the wild have like 7 traumas a day. Like, they're running away from like, you know, tigers and bears and things, you know, just as dangerous as fire 7 times a day. And they're not having post-traumatic stress disorder. Like, what's happening? They're still out, you know, animaling. Like, why are we getting leveled by a dental surgery? So Peter did all of this studying and then all of this teaching about why, and like how we as humans can use the wisdom of the body to allow trauma to release, actually literally release. And it can be very subtle and very simple. And it's another thing, like the quantum teaching, the circadian teaching, and the grounding, that can be deceptively subtle, so that people are like, no, I want to go do like a big thing. And you're like, no, 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 just tell me, can you feel your feet on the floor? No, well, I don't know how this is going to heal my blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, trust me, can you feel your feet on the floor? And they'll talk about everything else, not their feet. But if you can start feeling your feet on the floor, and then like, oh, why is my hand like twitching? Your whole life can change. So that background, to have that as my background, is, I feel incredibly fortunate, especially as someone who had a lot of childhood trauma, who I came to everything I came to, not because I was like, oh, I think this is interesting. I was trying to save my own life. So that's where I come from as a practitioner. And I also come from like, if what I'm telling you doesn't resonate or it feels like a no to you, like you, please don't listen to me. Because there's something else to do. We're the same. Like, go, like there's a million things that could work. And I'm not that, I mean, I do feel like I am the end of the road for a lot of people who try to line up other things before me. But I'm not, you know, I may be the last stop on a lot of people's journeys, but I don't have to be, you know, we don't have to, like, there's so much, the resonance of healing comes in so many different forms. It doesn't, when I was in polarity school, cranial sacral, there were a lot of people in school with me who had been acupuncturists or, you know, just a lot of different other healing modalities. And, you know, in Chinese medicine and Ayurveda, a lot of the points are different on the body of like, what's that? And there would be just like revolutions in the classroom of like, well, no, that's the liver point. Like, no. And it, you know, I don't want to say it doesn't matter, but like in my clinical practice, like, I don't know if it matters. Okay, that was the first part. What was the second part?
That's great. So and I want to share a somatic experience example in my own life. So when my third child was born, it was a very fast delivery. It happened in the middle of a very aggressive thunderstorm. There's a lot going on. And I basically did 3 pushes and he was out. And right immediately afterwards, I started shaking uncontrollably, just shook and shook and shook. And instead of being like, uh-oh, what the heck is wrong with my body? It was like almost like a beautiful sense of relief, knowing that this was my body processing what just took place. And so I think I want people to actually recognize that this is a thing. Had I not known that, I would have attempted to stop it, or I would have been embarrassed by it, and instead it was just like, oh, woohoo. And so I think it's really nice to be able to like bring this awareness to people if they're not aware of it. And that's a beautiful synopsis you did of Peter's work. So then moving into, you know, essentially processing a trauma or experiencing grief or loss, what could that look like for people? Because, and again, and I also want to highlight Gabor Mate's work with this too. You're probably familiar with Gabor, but it's this idea that we don't want to suppress, right? We're not talking about just putting on a happy face and suppressing. It's like everything is fine. It's like, no, we could still go outside in the morning and have gratitude for that new day, while at the same time spending an hour crying and mourning for what we had, you know. And so what could be some things that we could talk to people about in terms of like, what does mourning look like? What does grieving a loss look like?
I mean, it does look like that. Like for me, there has been a lot of going out in the morning in the sun and weeping and really letting the body weep. But also, I think it's important to not force, right? So what's the balance in between? I think the first question, which is a question that none of us want to really be asked, is like, what is stopping you? Like, what's in the way? What do I usually use as a distraction? And for many of us, it's our phones. And I know that in a trauma, we want to go to what is known. So if a person has been used to getting on the phone and just being in whatever world of the phone they're in, it might be a hard time to put it away. But if we can just try to put it away, start a little bit. Like, I'm going to put it in the other room for 15 minutes, or I'm going to go out. If you have the luxury of having another human that you live with or somebody that is around you that you're like, I'm going to go walk with this person, I'm going to leave my phone behind. We're going to talk about it. We're going to talk about maybe what we lost. The other beautiful thing about somatic experiencing is something called titration, where Peter was always very conscious of like not wanting to push somebody over their capacity. There's a huge difference, though, I want to say, between our actual capacity and what we might think our capacity is, what our limited mind might think the capacity is. Like I was saying to you, like I woke up that morning the day after we evacuated, before we knew for sure that sorry, my computer's now shaking, before we knew for sure that our house had burned down, just feeling this sense of overwhelm of like, how am I going to handle this? Which, like, I also want to say, like, practitioners get those feelings too. Like, I do want to take out this idea of like a person in the world who doesn't have real person feelings. Like, there are things that overwhelm me to the point of feeling like, well, it's time for me to go inpatient into a mental, like, I'm going to lose it. Like, I definitely that morning was like, cannot. But again, the body, we are so resilient. I got out of bed, the sun was coming up. I looked at the sun, I grounded, and I was like, and when I say grounded, I wasn't even like going out into earth. I was in an apartment building in Santa Monica. Like, I just energetically felt my feet on the floor and I looked out at the sun amidst a lot of smoke. And I was present. That's another huge thing, is allowing ourselves to be present. Again, I'm going to go back to this thing about the phones. And it's like not a very popular thing to be getting in the way of, because it's most people's favorite addiction. But I do think that, or I have witnessed in clinical practice that, like, and in my own life, that when I am diverting my attention away from something that I'm afraid of feeling, it's not going to go well. Like, to be present, to take time. One thing that's been incredibly hard is getting new clothes, which I sort of touched on. It's really hard to like go into a clothing store and look at clothes and think about my clothes that I lost. It's hard to go into a grocery store, actually, because I'm looking at food and I'm like, well, we had that in our house. Like, where is my house? Don't skip that. Like, don't skip that moment. Like, that's sad. Like, where is my house, right? That's what I mean. Like, that's, I think, one practical tool of like, we're all going really, really fast. We're emailing 7 different people. We're this, we're that. Those of us who lost our houses are emailing and talking to either FEMA or insurance or whatever, you know, all the things, writing out lists of what we lost. The writing out of the lists of what we lost is, I think, also a good tool. And in the midst of it, though, this idea of titration, of only taking it in tiny bits. Like, so say you're in a situation like I am, where you're writing out lists of all of your things that you lost. Also then, like, do that for a half hour or an hour, and then go out and take a walk. And call someone you love, or be with someone you love, or take it in small bits. But lean in and open up to discomfort, because there's no emotion that's going to destroy us. And in my clinical practice, in my own life, it's like, whatever I'm running from is the thing that is running my whole life.
That's
yeah.
no, it's so powerful. It's like, I love this idea of titration, but also feeling it. And it's interesting because when we're talking through the lens of emotions and processing our emotions, I think a concrete example that I love to give people with this is that a lot of people experience that feeling of their muscles working during exercise. And it's
Mhm.
like, it's kind of similar. It's like, you know, that there's a specific threshold that you feel comfortable. Okay, that 10 lunges felt good. I was working, but you know that that 10 lunges probably wasn't enough to get you stronger if that was what your goal was, right? And so it's like getting just to that point and then knowing, just like with exercise, to when to pull back and recover, because we don't want to be doing 50 lunges every leg every 10 minutes for the whole entire, you know, waking time that we're, you know, that we're up. And so it's like, it's this idea of, I think if you can almost tie it to that and then allowing the recovery, and whatever that recovery looks like, it could, like you said, it could be a walk, talking to a loved one, that grieving, that, you know, process of writing could ultimately be a recovery of just, now you're crying and you're just letting it out, and that's okay. So this is, I think, beautiful, beautiful information to be sharing with people on this. And then because we're unfortunately going to probably be having to wrap up in about 5 minutes or so. But the idea that we were talking about with the combination of that, I want to say your combination of nervous system support, nervous system regulation techniques with the circadian stuff, in my opinion, if people are dealing with anything, that is such a beautiful combination to know how to work, because it basically kind of like brings the body back, like you said, into homeostasis. The body knows what threats are truly threatening versus what's not, and it can adapt and become resilient accordingly. With the circadian stuff, we know the time of day. We geomagnetically can locate ourselves on the planet when we are really in deeper contact with the Earth's magnetic field. When we know nighttime, the body knows when to heal and repair. And when the nervous system can appropriately sense threats and then safety signals, it allows the body to say, okay, I know what's going on, and this is what I can do. So I want people to really, really recognize that Rachael has such a beautiful combination of these two things to be supportive. And she's talking through both of these lenses here, because I think they're very, very important in light of what you're experiencing.
Yeah, I mean, it is grace that I think that you know, I come to, that's what I got, that's what I found, that's what I got, that's how I get to go through this. I think also, I don't remember who said this, maybe Rumi, to take everything as though it were a gift. And so I am really working through the gift of having my house and my town burn down and all of the, but I'm also working through the gift. That's a way to look at emotions too, because I think there are certain emotions and there's also certain life experiences that we think we don't want. And almost everybody that comes and has something amazing to share to us, usually it's right after the life experience they thought they couldn't live through. So to allow, like, fear, like I have fear, I have all the, I'm here humaning. But when I take it as this gift, like, okay, like here, this is the experience I'm having as being a human right now. I'll finish with just this one story of one of my favorite meditation teacher friends, and he was having a retreat. And it was the end of the retreat. So everyone was presumably like in their most, like, their best selves, let's just put it that way, theoretically. And they were all eating together. And everybody, I don't know that everybody on the retreat was vegan, but I think probably a lot of them were. And so the meals that were being prepared for them were, vegan, all vegan, so they were having their vegan breakfast sausages. Everybody was like, this is the best vegan breakfast sausage I've ever had. And somebody finally goes in the kitchen to be like, where's this? Like, we need to know what, like, I want this at home. Well, in the kitchen, they found out that that was not a vegan breakfast sausage. That was, Jimmy Dean. the room erupts in hysteria. And my meditation teacher just sits there and he's like, so this is how it's gonna go. And you just, just like, I really try to adopt that attitude a lot. Like, okay, as I was trying to get on Zoom, like everything was going wrong. And all of a sudden it just came to me. I was like, okay, so this is how it's gonna go. I'm gonna not be able to be on the interview, whatever. I'm gonna miss Carrie. I got on. Maybe I would, maybe I wouldn't. But we're here for however long we're here in these bodies. And like, this is how it's gonna go.
Yeah. And I think to just kind of finalize what this is, I think you're able to have that awareness because of what one of the because of a recommendation that you've given. I don't want people to like not hear it, but it is take time away from distractions, because when you have time away from distractions, this is when those types of insights and intuitions and awarenesses appear. And it's as simple as 5 minutes of just sitting. I like to sit outside, but just like 5 minutes of just sitting without something to read or something to listen to or someone to talk to, just 5 minutes. And honestly, from there, you'll start to realize, wow, a lot can happen when I kind of just sit in silence and supposedly think I'm going to be bored. And instead, it's a pretty profound time because it gets you to moments like you're talking about, where it's like, okay, what if this is a gift and I am going to do something with this, or this, this is what I'm going through right now. And so it gives you yes, I want to emote, but at the same time, I am going to move on from this. And so it's just, I think, a powerful thing to have the mindset that you have and to help coach people with that, but also at the same time, have people step away from the screen, step away from the distractions to either emote and feel, or to allow intuition to speak more clearly, allow the spirit to move you, whatever it might be. So Rachel, are you taking on new clients at all?
Yes, in a period of, yes, I'm back to my practice as of yesterday. And I have had a waiting list. Like yes, there's been a waiting list for a while. It still exists. So yes, I'm here and I'm working, and it's, yes.
So yeah, I'm hearing a waiting list, but like if people just want to like, I don't know, if people want to learn more from you and just your amazing knowledge that you're just sharing, where could they find your work?
Um, we'll have an email address, and they can, then that's the best way to,
Right.
to get in touch.
We will put that in the show notes in the description here, because I have a feeling that this is really going to resonate with some people, and they're going to maybe need that support. So thank you so much for making this
Very,
work.
thank you. Thank you. It is my honor, pleasure, all of the above, to be with you right now. So thank you so much.
Likewise, likewise.